Welcome to the new season of the Live Your Spa Life show. The Spa in Spa Life stands for Seek Power Always, that divine power within you to do what you're here to do. The theme for this season is intentional living. Amazing people like you share ways to live by design and with purpose to ensure that this short ride of life occurs with choice, physically, financially, spiritually, and in your relationships to create a world-class life. In these times of uncertainty, it's time for you to move past the distractions and start trusting yourself more through your God-giving knowingness. No one truly knows better what's best for you than you. In this season, you'll have plenty of examples of people choosing their best life and creating a positive impact through intentional living. Thank you for sharing your precious time with us and being part of the Live Your Spa Life conversation. With us today is Sam Tornatore, an accomplished author and leading expert in the field of beating procrastination and productivity. With a 19-year track record of helping over 10,000 people and businesses break free from the constraints of feeling like they never have enough time or being paralyzed by procrastination. Sam helps overwhelmed business owners who have an endless to-do list to optimize their focus, to stop worrying about when they will find the time to do tasks, and to take back control of their time and productivity. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you. My pleasure being here. And once again, thanks for the opportunity. Looking forward to it.
Thank you for being here as well. Well, I'd like to jump in. One of the hats that you wear is neurochange practitioner. What is that, and how do you help people just overcome the resistance to change?
Yeah, look, good question. Neurochange is all about the way that our brain is wired, and it usually encompasses around a set of beliefs that we have, a belief structure, and it's making change that is consistent with the way that our brain works. So we've been conditioned over time to think a certain way, and neurochange is about unwiring that conditioning to unlock our potential, I guess. And a lot of us don't really realize that we are governed by a program, if you like, that's been imposed on us right from childhood through all our peers, all our conditioning, our upbringing, our parents, role models, leaders, and we've been molded. So, but deep down, we've got this unlimited potential, really, that came from us from birth. But with all the conditioning, it's molded us, and we've changed, and we've become a certain entity. It's a conditioned self. So neurochange is about making the change by being aware that we've been conditioned and how to unpack that conditioning so that we can evolve with our true self, impart a new level of beliefs, and go forward with a new structure. So that's a bit of a summary on what neurochange is about. And unless we actually tackle that belief system that we have, then our changes are going to be fragmented. They're not going to be permanent change. We'll make some change, but then we'll default back to our overriding program. So to make effective change, we need to get to the core. That's really essentially what it's about.
Right. Well, we have so much programming coming at us like all the time from so many different ways. How do people kind of pick apart the parts that are working for them versus the ones that are actually taking them out of the game?
Yeah, look, often it just comes down to taking stock of your life. And, you look at your life and you think, if there's an area that your life that you just feel like you're not good at, or you're not performing, or you're not excelling to the way that you want to. So if you look at the wheel of life concept, I'm sure many people are aware of that, you look at what areas of your life you're doing well at. And every time I've done this through, hundreds of seminars, there is usually, and I put this my own life in this bracket as well, and that's why I have mentors and I constantly am involved in immersing myself in material. But if you look at that wheel of life, there's usually an area that's a deficit somewhere. It's what you're least good at. And that's usually an area that, if you were to fill in that gap, would give you a more balanced view of your life. So in that area where you're not doing so well at, you first got to create an awareness factor. You've got to say to yourself, you know what? when I look at my entire life, this area here, whether it be my physical, my health, my finances, my spirituality, whatever it is, there's a gap. And in that gap, you've got to get real and you've got to identify, you've got to say something is not working in that gap. So the first step is to identify that chances are there's some belief structure going on, something happening that's just not working for you. So awareness is the first key.
Got it. So once you have that awareness and you're just kind of getting down to brass tacks, if you will, let's talk a little bit about peak flow state. So, how does that help like our overwhelmed and, exhausted people really just focus on what they need to focus on?
The peak flow state is when everything is aligned. We have inside of us a set of values. So I do a lot of work with people about procrastination. And I say to them, I don't know you all that well, but I can guarantee you the thing you procrastinate about is the thing that you really don't want to do. And you don't want to do it because it's not consistent with your values and what's important to you. Like, you never have to motivate a kid to play a video game because they're excited about it. It's important to them. It's part of their values. It's enthusiastic for them. But you take the same kid, you're saying, well, got to clean up your room. Well, that's not going to do it for them because that's not really in their rank of importance. Like video games are up here, cleaning up the rooms are down here. So you've got to lift that to a point that it creates a lot more value for you. So for many people, they're doing things when they're out of alignment. So when you're in a peak flow state, everything's aligned. You're doing what you are. You're being who you are. You're pursuing the things you want to do, the things that you're good at because they resonate with you. And when you're in that peak flow state, that's why you get in that arena where time stands still, you're in the zone and things happen. So the converse of that is that when you're in an overwhelmed state, when you're in that state of, stress, anxiety, things aren't working out, it's because your mind and you aren't aligned. And you've got to get back and you've got to say, what do I need to change here to either put myself in that state or get this environment to be more consistent with the outcomes that I want? So it's about reframing, Diane. It's always about reframing and it's always about awareness and reframing.
Got it. Author Dan Sullivan talks about procrastination, that not all procrastination is bad, that a lot of times it gives you an indicator of, you mentioned like things that you don't want to do, but also maybe things that you shouldn't be doing, like they maybe are out of your wheelhouse. So how do we really look at this from like true procrastination because there's maybe a fear getting in the way versus procrastination that's kind of giving you an indicator that maybe it's something you shouldn't be doing at all?
Great question. And look, there's many layers of procrastination. I'm not suggesting it's one thing for everybody because, after 19 years of doing this, everybody is so unique. So for one person, it could be a fear, as you suggested. For another person, it could be something else. But the thing that I say to people usually when you find yourself procrastinating is about start off with, is this something that I really want to do? And if the answer is no, which is likely because you procrastinate about it, then you've got to ask yourself the big question, which a lot of people don't like to ask the question, but why am I procrastinating? If it's something I don't want to do, why is it? And when you analyze that, you might find that you're on a career path, for example, that just doesn't grab you anymore. And that's a sign where you need to trust your intuition and say, you know what, it's just not really me. It's not my values. See, a lot of people get imposed ideas and goals and visions as to the other people's. So the question I say to people is this your dream? Is this your vision? Is this something you want to do, or is it something that your parents told you should do, or your society, or expectations about the should? Now, that was the worst word ever created, is should. Right? There is no should. There's either what you want to do or you don't want to do. Should is other people's expectations. So, one example, for example, as just to give you an idea of some history, when I would go to some real estate agents and I'd talk about procrastination and do a presentation, there would often be, and it was quite amazing how there would often be someone that was a poor performer, or they would procrastinate, but it wasn't about their ability. It's just that they were a square peg in a round hole. And they actually really didn't want to be in that industry. And so, they self-sabotage. And Diane, I've lost track of how many principals I've spoken to who've later, when I said, "Oh, well, what was your feedback with the team?" And he'd say, or she'd say, "Well, thanks very much. One of my people left after your presentation." and I was sort of smiled about that. And he or she would say the same thing. But you know what? When we really thought about it, they weren't a fit. So it's a long answer to your question, but sometimes it is disguised as this is not something you need to do or want to do. And look, we're on this planet for a limited time, and why pursue an activity that just not resonate with you at all? And yeah, that's the short of it, really.
Yeah, 100%. There's so many different factors, when you talk about like, the round peg in a square hole and, all that thing or, all those things where, it could be this person is a right fit for the company, but they're in the wrong seat, right? They're not in the right position. So
Correct.
when we start talking about, values and what are you passionate about and, what actually excites you about your position, a lot of times we talk about like the 70-30 rule where, 70% of your job could be doing all the wonderful things you do, but there's probably a 30% that just isn't your favorite things to do. And maybe you're not as motivated and you're not always in the zone, but to be able to distinguish that you're primarily doing the things that you love to do and that you're moving forward and that you're excited about it. And to be able to distinguish with the things that you're not excited about, what is that about? Is it because you can't do it? You don't like doing it? And then we touched a little bit on fear. And so just to kind of bring that up a little bit to the forefront, because, there's a lot of that undercover fear that can happen for people. What are some of the tools that you use or that you use with your clients to help them kind of move past that fear once they've identified that that's a stop point?
Yeah, look, it's one of my favorite areas because, look, at some level, we all have fears of some sort, and some of them we recognize, some of them we don't recognize. But after we've addressed the fact that, yes, this is really something I want to do, it resonates with my values, then you've got to look at, well, what's holding you back? And we usually, when it comes down to, is some kind of fear. And look, I know people have heard this before, but it's so true. Fear is false evidence appearing real. It's a projection that we have into the future or into a scenario. So one of the things that I do with clients that really is probably the biggest lightning bolt for many people is that when people talk about their fears, and I listen, it comes down to this one question, Diane. And when I ask it, surprisingly, I've never had anybody really challenge it. They've thought about it for a while and they usually say, not much or nothing. And this is the question. I say, where is the rock hard, tangible evidence that this fear exists, right? You say to me that you feel that this will happen and that will happen. And I'll say, well, tell me where the evidence of that is. And as I said, usually comes down to it's just in my mind, or it's based on history, or it's based on one event that happened rather than consistently. And the golden rule would be this: that thing you're fearing or that thing you're thinking about in that situation, if it applies to everybody on the planet at that situation consistently over time, then it's a real fear and you need to avoid it. But if it doesn't fit into that description, chances are you've created a belief system about that and it probably doesn't exist. So where is the evidence? That's the question. Where is the evidence? And and people, they stop and they think, and once they realize themselves, I don't bring it to their attention. I don't, they realize it. They go, you know what? Now that I think about it, there's probably really not much there at all. So it shatters that belief system, and all of a sudden they're just like, oh, it was false. Right. And unfortunately, that's how we're governed, a lot of us,
Right. Well, there's also, when you've moved past fear and you know what that's like, what your stuck points are with that. As a retired police officer, we have a totally different, relationship to fear and moving towards fear.
Yeah.
And I always like the other kind of positive acronym for fear, where it's face everything and rise, right? So no matter where you're at, to rise above it, look around it, look at different ways of doing it, and changing your relationship for that. And that pattern interrupt is, as you mentioned, is such a powerful thing for people to look at, because it's like, once you get through tough things and you realize that you can do tough things, your
Yeah.
relationship changes forever around that.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of my other favorite things, there's a famous book about it. I can't remember the author. I think it's Susan Jeffries. I'm not sure. It's feel the fear and do it anyway. Right.
Yes.
So yeah, feel it. Absolutely. Know at some level that it's not really real. Just hold your breath and just do it. And you'd be surprised. All you got to do is once, and you think, oh, it wasn't too bad. Nothing really happened. And then, fortune favors the brave, and take that first step. And you know what? Action cures fear every day of the week.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
as long as it's not like, obviously as a police officer, you know that there are some fears that are real, but that gets back to that definition. If it's real for everybody. Like everybody in the situation know that this is a dangerous situation. This is not good. This is not I didn't make this up to be a dangerous situation. It's real. There's evidence, which gets
Yeah.
back to that first question.
Absolutely. One of the things that you had asked about, like, what were some of the concerns that people are faced now, some of our listeners. And I think one of the things that has kind of consistently come up is when people, as particularly entrepreneurs, when they're in it, they have a plan, they're moving on the plan, right? And there comes these moments, and whether they're pivotal decision moments or what have you, it is where they get to a point where they start second guessing themselves, whether it's themselves personally or the path that they're on. And I think that anyone who has gone through, years or decades of business, or even just newly in it, they don't always, until they've been through it, understand that whole sense of kind of the darkest hour coming before the light. Like, you kind of, like, you're just moving through it and you just seem like, where is the light? Where's the end of all of this? So, when people are pursuing like their goals and they're moving forward and they kind of are in those dark spaces, and especially what's happened in the last couple of years, like, kind of,
Yeah.
people kind of lost their stride in a lot of ways, and kind of looked at the world a little bit differently. How do you help people kind of move through that?
Look, it comes anytime you've got that state of uncertainty, some craziness going on. Look, the thing I say to people is usually comes down to the same thing, and it's like, focus on what you can control, and only what you can control. The rest of it, look, if you got no influence over it, you got no direct control over it, stay out of that lane. It'll drive you nuts, right? So
Amen.
it'll drive you nuts. People try to, they're all over the place. Oh, what if this? What if that? You have no control over that. You only have control over two things, and that's you, your thinking, and your actions. That's it. So the more you get into the habit of saying to yourself, yeah, there's a lot going on here, but what can I do right now at this moment to move myself forward? Because the other thing I say to people is, you look at your history. You've had some great successes. I'm sure you've had some really big achievements where you think, man, that's touchdown. That's me. I made that happen, right? Well, remind yourself of that, because that's you at your capacity, at your best. And I guarantee you, when you're in that zone, you were calling the shots. You were taking the actions. See, too many people base a lot of their successes on their future results, and they get concerned when their results aren't happening the way they want to happen. And what I say to those people is that, yeah, it's understandable, because you can't necessarily 100% control everything that's going to happen out there to come to you. But you know what you can control? Your activity. And if you focus on your activity, that ahead of time, you said, you know what, if I do these things, I'm going to get that outcome. Just focus on that activity. And when you get that activity done, whatever it is, congratulate yourself. Well done. You keep doing that, it's a matter of probabilities.
Yes. Well, speaking on that activity, what is like the one kind of biggest thing people can do to make a positive impact that actually has them feel like fulfilled or satisfied?
I think it's taking the step in the right direction. A lot of people get overwhelmed. They think of some task, some goal, some whatever it is, and it's too big. It's just too huge. My favorite quote is, how do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time.
One bite at a time, right? So if you start with the simplest first step and you take that action point, you'll feel so much better that you've actually taken a step towards that journey. And then all you've got to do is take another step and another step. The journey of a thousand miles starts with the first step, right? So what I say to people is that just get into the mindset of doing one thing that you can do today, and then worry about the next thing you do tomorrow. And a couple of things happen, Diane, is as you're doing that, you create momentum. Momentum creates excitement, it creates enthusiasm, and it generates an energy of itself, but also starts to develop a pattern. As you start to do these little things and you get successes, or you modify along the way, you feel good because you're heading down a path. And then it's a matter of just a discipline. And that's where commitment comes into just doing that daily steps over and over again. And, you just stay. It's like if you're in that buffet line waiting for the meal at the end, if you just take tiny steps, there's a lot of people in front of you. You keep taking step after step, you're going to get to the end. But you know what? If you get out of the line, good luck. You got to start right back at the beginning.
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that we can distinguish in clients and corporations is the difference between bringing in income and actually creating profits. So
Yeah.
what are some of the things that you are seeing that are driving profits for the most successful companies?
Look, that's a great question. Talking about values, most people don't know, but I actually started off my career as an accountant, right? Which is so left field to what I am now. So, but that was a conditioning thing. My parents said, you got to go to uni, you got to get a good job, you got to, get a profession. So anyway, the reason I bring that up is that now one of the things that's really served me is an ability to just understand numbers. So when I see a lot of businesses, with a lot of activity, they're making a lot of revenue. This is a big one. They're making a lot of money, but it's not about how much money you make. It's how much money you get to keep.
Yes.
And a lot of people are just not aware of their own numbers. If someone actually sat them down and said, look, you're making $1 million in sales, fantastic. Let's look at where that $1 million is going. Well, you got some staff, you got some overheads, you got rent, and when they work that out, they realize that, hey, the amount of money I'm making, I'm probably better off getting a job at McDonald's. So the first answer to your question is be aware of your numbers and look at what's going on. And then the second part of that is to work out where you can actually get rid of some of the holes, because there are holes in your business. So my emphasis for a lot of businesses isn't get more money until you've identified you are most efficient. Plug every hole that you have that's causing an excess, that's sucking the profit out of your business. Manage that first. This is about fixing holes in buckets. Once you've done that and you've got a nice stream that's coming in and efficient, then look at putting more at the top. But until then, you're like putting it into the top and it's just leaking out of a bucket. And that's a big thing for me because, that's part of my accounting background, but I see it a lot, in a lot of things. People want more. Everyone talks about the gains, about getting more. And I go, well, you want more? Let's look at if there's any losses that are happening right now that, first of all, you're not even aware of. and secondly, that might be so big that's creating that drain. And then the other thing that goes hand in hand with that, Diane, is just productivity. Why do activity and get less? Why don't you want to maximize your rate of return on you, right, and your business and get more efficient? So that's a bit of a long answer to that question, I think. But I'm quite passionate about, as you can tell, but plug up the holes in your business, but first find out where they are.
Absolutely. Well, part of that awareness of just knowing like what actually, elevates you, what's not working, and your space actually becomes part of that as well. And so we live differently in, when I look at our home, like you live differently in your bedroom versus your kitchen or your office. So what's your favorite room in your home and why?
My favorite room is probably my office, and only because, look, I like order. Everything's in its place, and it's my structured area. I know that when I'm in my office, I'm growing, I'm learning, I'm serving a purpose. So, and for me, I'm quiet at home office because that's my values: is to learn, is to educate myself, but also it's where I help people. It's where I have my Zoom sessions. And for me, it's all value add. It's either value adding to me or it's value adding to my clients. So probably my favorite. I mean, I love sleeping too. That's nice.
you know, it's interesting, for those, a lot of people listen to the show, but for people who are watching, you can actually see like your office and just, the brightness and, the space that you have around you and the order that's there. It was interesting that many years ago, there was a study that had come up around most people who had offices, especially home offices, they were the darkest, most cluttered room in the house. And they couldn't find anything, and there were stacks of papers and things everywhere. And so there was this correlation between how you were creating your space and whether or not you were, making money or losing money, because that was the room you didn't want to actually go in. So
Yeah.
it's interesting, our relationship to space and how it actually can help us kind of step into, being more productive.
Absolutely. And look, because I spend so much time in the area of productivity, I know what works and what doesn't work. And that's probably the thing I say to people most is that, create an environment that works for you. Your mind, look, there's so much of an assault on our mind going through all the time. So get into a space where your mind is able to just take a breath, able to focus and deal with the one thing you're doing at that time. And I guess I was fortunate enough to learn that a lot earlier in my career is that, even on your desk, have one piece of paper that you're working on at that one time. Everything, remove the clutter. I'm a bit of a minimalist. I hate clutter because clutter just creates confusion in my mind. So, I like to have order. It's not, I mean, I know that some people can go extreme. I'm not OCD, but order means that I don't have to think about other things. And if I don't have to think about other things, that means I can stay focused on what I'm doing at the time. And focus is where the key is, not multitasking. That's a big myth. Focus on one thing at a time. And the key to that, I know I'm digressing here, but it's the key to that is create a fortress around that one thing you're doing and protect it like it's your life. It's a bit extreme, but anyway, that's
No,
effective.
it actually isn't. I actually coined a term when I was still in the police department. It was called the clutter to drama ratio. And it was the more clutter that was in a space, the more drama and the more the police came to their home and had things happen. But the reverse was true as well, that people that had more calm in their space and didn't have a lot of things around, we didn't go to a lot of those homes. Like we didn't have a lot of that happen. And so one of the first things I did when I retired from the department is I helped people organize, because I knew how much organization really helped people have that peace of mind and be able to focus on that one thing in front of them and have it happen. So it's kind of interesting how it drives our behavior as well, the kind of spaces that we do create.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about being better. I mean, if you strive for excellence and you're working towards being better, would you put up with crap everywhere? Not really. That's not really a value that's consistent with being, your best self. So, you start to realize that I need to tidy this up a little bit. But for me, in addition to that, and I totally get that ratio, I see it here in Australia as well. But for me, it's about decluttering my mind. I look at it this way, my mind's only got a certain amount of bandwidth, certain amount of real estate, and I want to make sure that it's optimizing my bandwidth to what's important to me and getting rid of the other stuff.
Yes, Absolutely. Well, along our journey, particularly in our business life, there are a lot of things that, disempower us and take us out of the game versus really standing in our power and moving forward. How does intuition come into play for you in that?
Just my hearing aids just tweaked a bit. Then what was that question again?
No,
Sorry.
yeah, no worries. I was talking about how, in our business journey, that there are
Yep.
certain things that disempower us and kind of take us out of the game, and then there are things where we're actually able to stand in our power. And I was asking about how does intuition come into play for you with that?
Oh yeah, intuition's a big thing. Yeah, absolutely. Because remember how we talked about how we got layers of conditioning, we've got layers of uh, you know ingrained on us from previous experience of growing up and all that sort of stuff. So underneath that is our intuition. Underneath that is our true self. That's where we know, what, something's not right here, or there's something I need to be aware of. So the key is absolutely you've got to follow your intuition, because when you're in the zone or in that flow state, your intuition and your actions are matching. But when you're not matching, then you got to say to yourself, I got to make some changes here, because this is the big thing, Diane, is that your intuition is you, and any time that you go against your own judgment or you got to live with yourself, right? And that's hard, because the worst thing you want to do is to say, you know what, I didn't think that was the right thing to do, or I felt strong about it, but I did it anyway. Well, guess what? Who's the most important person on the planet, right?
Yourself. Yeah.
You're like, so trust your intuition. Even if you get it wrong, you're much better off saying that, having the satisfaction, you know what, I was guided by my thoughts. I chose to just, use my judgment, and I want to go with me, and I choose me. And even if you're wrong, you can live with that decision.
Right. Well, and that's
And
part of our internal guidance system. I mean, that's like our God-given intuition is like, I can't tell you how many times it would just, get you out of things. You turn down a corner you didn't turn down before.
absolutely.
You make a decision who you're going to work with or not work with, just anything from child raising to business. If we don't listen to that, it kind of takes away. That's where we get to be individuals, and we get to have that distinction that we get to, really show up in a different way. So, we talk a lot about here on the show about trusting yourself and standing in your power and really listening to that, because I think that's the time where people really see themselves, kind of go away from their visions and their values, is when they veer from that and they don't listen to that, their kind of true North Star of who they are and what they stand for. So.
Beautifully said, Diane. That's exactly right. I mean, it's you, you know, you're the one who lives with yourself, and just you got to focus on what you feel is right, and you get, this is a skill that you can develop, and after a while you start to realize that your decisions, your intuition, your judgment starts to get more and more accurate, and you learn to trust yourself more, and that's when you start to get more aligned, and then when you start to get rid of some of the conditioning, and you think, you know what, that's just other people's expectations, that's other people's views, that's not me, right? And you know, go with you, because that's your true north is always you, and that's who you are. Underneath all that conditioning, there's you. So you can't go wrong ever. I feel anyway.
Absolutely. Well, and with that, we're coming to our end of our time here, and I know that our listeners are going to want to stay in contact with you. How can they best do that?
Look, the simplest thing is to go to my website, which is just www.samtornatore.com. I actually have an easier website, which is www.bookwithsam.com. So that's just a simple one. It just overrides it. It comes to my website. Happy to share any information. Look, what I say to people is, look, if anything you've heard resonates with you, or if you've got more questions than answers, then you know what? Just book in for a consult. Right? No charge, no fee. And, I want to understand your world a bit more, because I know that everybody's unique. Because chances are someone's thinking, oh, Sam, but you don't know my situation, right? Yeah, okay, no worries. Well, I want to hear about it, right? Over here. Look, you know what? I might be able to offer some insights and ideas that might be a breakthrough you're looking for. See, the other thing I've worked out, Diane, is the crazy part. We're only ever one idea or one statement or one concept away from breakthroughs in our life. I look at my journey over time, the amount of mentors I've had, the amount of things I've read. Sometimes I can read one line in a book and I think, oh man,
There
that
it
is
is.
so, there it is. Oh, that is, and literally it's changed my life, whether it's a podcast, whether it's an author, it's just a statement a mentor said to me, and like I've lost track of how many times that's have happened, and that's available to anybody. So life is a journey of knowledge and awareness. So that's my offer to anybody listening: is hop on a chat with me. If I can help, great. If not, that's all cool too.
Awesome. Well, that's very generous of you, Sam. And, as we come to a close here, our theme for this season is intentional living. And so in what way are you living an intentional life?
Best way to live an intentional life for me is to just follow what you said, your North Star. Be 100% authentic. Ask yourself, what's really important to me? Because at the end of the day, living according to your values is what brings the joy. Goals, aspirations, dreams, absolutely, they're important. Along that way, you're going to have to change. You're going to have to decide whether you're living with your values or you're not. And all that activity is what's important. If you are living every day according to your values, in other words, are you being 100% authentic? And that applies to everything, then you're a success right now and you're living your best life. So to answer that question, be authentic and be you. Be you. You're the best person on the planet.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Sam, for being here with us today and sharing your wisdom.
My pleasure, Diane. It's been a lot of fun and thank you. And once again, I really, really appreciated the opportunity to interview me from all the way on the other side of the world.
I love it. I love it. Well, to all of our listeners out there, we started about this life is short. We want to be really clear and focused on why we're here and that we're doing the things that we love and we're making the impact that is. And the foundation of that is listening to your intuition. Like, we are all unique beings. We are really looking for what you are here to offer to the world that uniquely that no one else can do. So think about that today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Sam, and we're happy to reach out and help you as well. And until we connect again, live your spa life. Bye for now. Bye-bye.
Perfect. See you, Diane. Bye-bye.